Here we go, starting fresh, kind of. We were reading over how he got his works published earlier, which was kind of for me, but fascinating to see the letters written to get his works published and stuff like that. So right now we're on the Italian Fanon, unearthing and hidden editorial history. So I have no idea what this is going to be at. And again, forgive me for names and stuff. I took a week off because of like voice problems. It is largely through translation that Fanon's work is known today throughout the world. Fanon's impact in so many different countries and languages shows the success with which his theories have circulated and the readiness with which they have adapted to diverse contexts of struggle and oppression, thus realizing the potential of the universalizing tendency at work in his anti-colonial writings, even when he was writing specifically on the Algerian struggles for independence against French colonial occupation. This section deals with the publications and translations of Fanon's work in Italian and includes a number of hitherto unpublished documents, both from the archives of the Italian published house, Giulietto, I can't say it, Giulio Anindio in Turin, in the private, here we go, Paralai family archives. Of these hitherto unknown documents, one is a handwritten letter dated 22nd May 1960, Tunis, which Fanon dedicated to Josie, signed with his name. The letter shows evidence that Fanon actively contributed to the editorial project for an Italian anthology of his writings, one that differs from the standard edition of his works published to date. And it's those people's names: Kiro, Giovanne, Giovanni, I think, and Pirelli, Pirelli, I don't know, Kiro. Fanon visited Italy on several occasions, in particular Rome, where he presented a part of his famous essay, The National Culture, subsequently expanding and then including the, La Damas di El Torre. At the second, that's one of his writings in French. I can't remember which one it is. I don't know if it's Black Skins, White Mask, or if it's, I don't know which one it is. Potentially it could be his Wretched of the Earth, but anyways. At a second Congress of Black Writers and Artists in 1959, as a member of the FLN and then a representative of the GPRA, he often traveled to Africa via Italy. In Rome, Fanon was once a target of a failed assassination attempt, which it seems was orchestrated by La Main Rogue, a clandestine right-wing terrorist organization of the French Secret Services. We welcome that Fanon received as hardly surprising, since Italy was more politically sympathetic to the Algerian independence movement than most other European nations. By the time Fanon's ideas began to circulating widely throughout Italy, young progressive Italians sided with the Algerian liberation movement against the French colonial occupation. They perceived engagement in the anti-colonial struggle as an occasion to renovate the Italian left, which in their eyes was tired, sterile, and tied to a Soviet-inspired retrograde and rigid communism, and an internationalism rooted in the support of anti-imperialist movements and revolt against European colonial domination, appears as the way forward for redefining what many of them perceive as purely rhetorical demonstrations of anti-fascism, whereby including emerging nations beyond the confines of Europe. Italian was one of the first language in which Fanon's work was translated, mainly thanks to the publisher Giulio Andudii. Andudii played a key role in the development of Italian culture in the post-war period. The publishing house was, moreover, extremely politically engaged, with links to the Italian Communist Party and the more radical sections of the Italian left. They published a series of books on the War of Algerian Liberation against colonial France. For example, Henry Alegi's La Question, published in Italian by Adunidai in 1958 with the title Le Toratura. Can't say it. It's Torutura. The speed of the translation was such that Mesropo or Minut and the other person's name, Nduidi, I can't say his name, frequently published the same book in the same year, as was the case with Alges, I can't say his name, Aggallegs book. Galileo and do it, I can't say his name, I'm sorry, but I can't say Italian names, therefore had already published volumes of testimonies and documents concerning the war, and he was close to Giovanni Perelia, a key figure in the intellectual landscape of 1960s Italy, all of which helps to explain the interest in Fanon, the sicon of an illustrious industrial family of Italy. Perelia fought in the Second World War before embracing the cause of Italian resistance. His experience as a partigiano and his anti-fascist militancy partly explained his turn to politics after the war, first to communism and socialism, then to anti-colonialism and simultaneous rejection of fascism and colonialism. Pirelli's support for the Algerian cause and his desire to publish the testimonies of protagonists and combatants in the War of Liberation and Independence led him to take an interest in Fanon. He was already close to some members of the FLN and of the Jensen Network, and helped. Hold on a second. And helped many of them both financially and practically. And above all, he played a crucial role in exposing the war and making it known to the broader public beyond Algeria and France, and particularly in Italy. In 1963, Pirelli, in collaboration with the French journalist Patrick Kelsel, published with Ndouadi, I can't say his name, an important collection of letters. And they're all it's the letters of the Algerian Revolution, which includes texts and testimonies of Algerians about the War of Liberation that had ended 1 year earlier. Pirelli contributed in exceptional fashion, at once politically and culturally, to the Algerian movement for independence. His interest in this movement led him to form a close friendship with Fanon, but he also produced another extraordinary book, today forgotten, called Stories of Algerian Children. This book gathers the testimonies of refugee children and their drawings about their traumatic experience of the war. The interviews with the children were conducted by the suitcase carrier, Jacqueline Charby, and the other members of the Information Ministry of the Provincial Government of Algeria Republic, GPRA. According to Charby, Fanon and Pirelli collaborated on the methodology of the interviews. Hold on a second. I have a warning. Because I'm not engaging.
While we're discussing that warning, when you first started talking at the beginning of the book, you said it could be Black Skins, White Mass, or it could be Richard of the Earth, but Frantz Fanon was still alive at the time. And wasn't Richard of the Earth actually published after his death?
I don't know. Can't remember. You can look it up. Want to. Pirelli is the reason why Fanon came to be published in Italy. And in the first place, he was his steadfast supporter at Adno N.D. I can't say his name, as is revealed by the series of documents that I discussed below in two sections. The first deal with letters between Pirelli, Fanon, and Adouin Mesropo relating to the Italian publication of his work. Before the author's death in December 1961, then after Fanon's death, the editorial decision radically changed in a different trajectory of publication from the one originally planned by Pirelli and Unuende, I can't say his name, I swear to God, was followed. Pirelli is an anthology of Fanon's work titled, I can't say it because it's in French, Ndouin in 1971, is the only collection of his writings that does not follow the standard publication format of the Mesropo edition. the publication of Fanon in Italian, 1960 to 61. Hello. We're not getting a lot of coins. As you can see, we don't have a lot of coins. The first reference to Fanon in Pirelli's letters to I hate saying this, are to be found in the preparatory works of, I cannot say the words because they're in French, in a letter addressed to his dear friends at Anduin's date, 5 January 1960. Pirelli explained the sort of material he wished to include in his book. His premise was that his and Kelson's point of view coincided with the FLN's. Pirelli stated his intention to carry out a comprehensive survey of all the El Mujahideen's issues of FLN documents and the Resistance Algerian organ of the FLN's Fédération de France, and to go to Tunis to make contact with Algerian and French FLN leaders, and through them with Fanon and Accra and a group in Morocco. Pirelli visit Tunis in spring 1960 to gather documentation for his book, and return there afterwards on several occasions on his preface to the Italian translation of, I can't say that word because it's in Italian, I think. He says that he sought to contact Fanon for the first time between 1960 and early 1961. His correspondence that is reproduced below shows that Pirelli met with Fanon on at least 2 occasions, and that this meeting profoundly shaped his political vision and his writing, in particular his view that if there were to be a world revolution, it would be led by the developing world. Fanon was in Tunis, having just returned from the Soviet Union, where he had been treated for leukemia. He had already begun the project of writing one of his books that I say in French when he first met Pirelli. Commentators have described it as love at first sight between 2 highly committed anti-colonial activists, and former anti-fascist partisans, who shared a passion for literature and for the Algerian liberation. Between May and July 1961, Pirelli and Fanon together conceived the editorial project for the anthology collecting Fanon's published and unpublished essays. But it is clear that after the letter from Pirelli to his colleagues and friend Renario Panzaneria, sorry, I'm ruining these names, who worked at Anduedi, can't say his name, can't say the name, that it was Fanon who decided on the structure of the Italian volume. The Italian title of his anthology was to be the essays on Algerian Revolution and on decolonization in Africa. I don't speak French. Well, this is Italian and French, so it's both.
It was Legend of the Earth, which he started writing a couple of weeks before he passed and published after he passed.
Okay, yeah. They could be talking about all of his works, and one of those is his works they talked about after he passed, in one little part. So we'll find out. But yeah, I believe. Thank you for looking it up. Thank you. Good job. Appreciate that. In a letter dated this discussion took place before the publication. Mesrepo in October 1961, in a letter dated 6 July 1961. Pirelli wrote to Panzaneria from Tunis to inform him that what he called the outcome of his conversation with Fanon on the editorial project. Fanon told him that his new book had moved completely away from Algeria. They agreed that for an Italian readership, the book ought to contain both earlier essays from, as well as the unpublished essays that were to form part of the other book that's always in French, so as to illustrate the evolution of his thinking from the Algerian essays of something in French again to the more theoretical ones of something else in French, according to Pirelli. Fanon's thus proposed to him to composite structures including old and new essays. This meeting about the composition of Fanon's Italian books to be published by Anduedi, some Italian, I think, publishing place, was preceded by the exchange of 3 letters between Pirelli and Fanon on May 1961. A letter from Pirelli to Fanon replied, and lastly Pirelli replied to Fanon. This correspondence revealed that After his first meeting with Fanon in Tunis in early 1961, Pirelli planned a Italian edition of something that's in Italian or French, 1959. However, this edition would not follow the edition that Mesereau was to publish. Pirelli wished to include other essays and writings by Fanon, which is why he wrote to his asking him specific questions about works underway that might possibly feature in that edition, as well as about essays that were to be found elsewhere. Pirelli had grasped just how scattered and dispersed Fanon's overture had become already in his lifetime. He also made inquiries into other articles published in newspaper, African Action, and other publications, and asked Fanon to write a new preface to the Italian edition of whatever that's. Oh, great, I'm not approved. Oh, go figure. Sorry. And this is important to retracing the prehistory of another book. Pirelli reported that Mesereau informed him of Fanon's intention to send to his French publisher an essay on the situation of the general prospects in Africa. Full of enthusiasm for this idea, Pirelli invoked the possibility of publishing such a work as a separate book in the collection perfectly suited to the essays of this sort. Pirelli thus wished to publish an Italian edition of Something I Can't Say that brought out Fanon's work in a broader way and in more updated fashion than the 1959 edition, by including his most recent writings. For the point was not to make do with another book on Algeria, but to publish a very serious work that would represent a qualitative leap of comparing with the endless cashiers and grievances of liberal protest. Pirelli wanted to present the Algerian struggle from the viewpoint of the Algerians and the militants themselves, and not through a paternalist prism of the European left. This was the methodological lesson we have learned from Fanon. Hold on a second, I need a drink. My mouth's getting dry. Yeah, I think so. Let me go look up. See if I can find it. Yeah, L''AN space V. So yeah, you're right. Fanon's reply to Pirelli, dated 22nd of May 1960, is a previously unknown letter by the author dictated to his wife. It is clear that Pirelli was the addressee of the letter, since Fanon replied point by point to his letter from 15th May 1961. The year is thus incorrect, especially since Pirelli's letters mentions a Fanon project of which Maspero knew only in July 1960. Pirelli's answered Fanon's letter of 31 May 1961. You can tell this has been translated into like European English, like UK English, because of the way they have the date situated. Like we do May 31st, 1961. In the UK, they do 31st May 1961. So you can tell. In this letter to Pirelli, Fanon wrote, "For an author, it is always very nice to be translated, and I am sure that knowing the care that you take to find the right word and the insider's understanding that you have about the social dimensions of the Algerian Revolution, you will produce excellent work." Then he undertook to answer Pirelli's question. Fanon's first of all affirms that he has no chapter to add to his book, because the project he had been undertaking in the preceding months bore on Africa. The project alluded to seems to be that of Algeria Cap, which is another language of July 1960, but refers more probably to the other French word, which Fanon told Mesereau he was writing in April 1961. In his letter, Fanon also authorized Pirelli to fit his essays, Mutual Foundations for National Culture and Liberation Struggles, into his volume concerning Fanon's reference to African Action. This periodical, which was established in Tunis in October 1960, had a prestigious team of contributors, including Josie Fanon, So why did Fanon state here that he contributes very rarely to it? Perhaps because it was in Tanzania paper, and because it followed a calculated line of moderation, as the editorial in the first issue put it. Perhaps also because Fanon, who was already ill and overburdened with work and political commitments, did not want to do any research on texts that lay in the past. In this letter, Fanon indicates to Pirelli his desire to write a preface to Italian translation of that word that you just said, and to send it to him by the month of July. But there is no trace of it because Fanon and Pirelli later decided to publish texts taken from that one word. Okay, sure, if it's left, I think, and if that's what you're saying. And from the future, with Satri's preface, in which case there'll be no preface from Fanon in the Italian edition. Prior to Fanon's death, then there existed a publication project with Anduin, the format of which differed from those published with editions Mesorepo. Moreover, the correspondence between Pirelli and Mesorepo, which I discussed below, lists all the Fanon's writings for the first time and shows that the canonical Fanon, whose overture we know through the standard edition, is a later instruction. Instead, his overture may be seen as a continuum of text liable to begin organizing in diverse ways depending upon the circumstances of specific political activities in which Fanon was involved. For a thinker like Fanon, whose perspective was so profoundly pan-Africanist and internationalist, whose field of interest was ever expanding, and who was beginning to conceive, translations played an important role. His later work, and especially was an attempt to translate the experience of the Algerian Revolution for a broader context of anti-imperialist struggles. Yeah. Fanon's publication in Italian, 1962 to 71. More water. Yeah. Sorry. In July 1961, 6 months after Fanon's death, Anduin published that word under the title in Italy, in Italian words. All right, I'll try it. I Denanati della Terra. The book was an immediate bestseller, one of Italy's highest selling in 1962. And another word, the title chosen with another word, was published in 1963. And I cannot say that word because it's all in French and Italian, but it also has the N-word in it. And 1965 by Sagatora, not Andui. These books were thus published in reverse order to the original French text. It seemed that after Fanon's death, Anduin, almost certainly through the influence of Pirelli, deemed it better to adopt Mesorepo's publication strategy for Fanon's work and published something in French and published something else separately. After publishing Socialgalia, can't say it, the next step would have been a post-humanist publication of Fanon's various scatterings and unpublished works. Pirelli set himself the goal of making Anduin's Fanon's publisher in Italy, as he declared both in Renato Somalia and Francois Mesorepo. Mesorepo was also Pirelli's publisher. In 1963, he, as we saw, Pirelli's books and testimonies about the Algerian Revolution came out in French with Mesorepo. Their corresponding dealt with both topics. In the letter dated 6 September 1963, Mesorepo wrote to Pirelli that he envisioned publishing 3 volumes of Fanon's post-humanist work. The first volume was to be a collection of his political writings. Mesorepo's description of it is very similar to the work that finally came out in 1964 under the title Per la Révolution Africaine. Neither the second nor the third volume ever saw the light of day. The second was to include all of Fanon's conference speeches, but not all of them were easily locatable. The third was to comprise Fanon's psychosociological works. To be added to this was one of the theater plays written in his youth. See Infra, the letter from 6 September, and the appended plan, which Mesereau devised, of the first two political volumes. It's cat tax. What is cat tax? I don't get it. I have cat tax. What do you mean cat tax? What's cat tax? I don't get it. He's sleeping.
I mean, show your kitty cat.
He's sleeping. He's sleeping. See? He's sleeping. He's just a bowl of fuzzy air. Look, see, he's sleeping. Sleeping. Little boy sleeping. Fanon sleeping. It's my Fanoni. It's Fanonian. It seems that some of the material Mesereau wanted to include had been provided to him by Pirelli, including essays and writings on Fanon, thus furnishing him with a precious initial bibliography on the writer. Among the transmitted documents was the biography written by Pirelli, as well as Jacquin Azoulay dictorial thesis, something in French that I can't say, University of Algiers, 1954. I can't say it, acquired the rights to all Fanon's post-humanist works, as envisioned by Mesereau in 3 volumes. However, like Mesereau, Ndouendi ultimately decided only to publish Pour la Révolution Africaine. Ndouendi initially commissioned the translation of the text in 1964 upon Pirelli's lukewarm recommendation. Yeah, he's cute. Pirelli's critical report, though positive, noted that the post-humanist text included few unpublished documents. Pirelli supported the publication of this text in Kazakh terms. He prestiged that the anti-Fanonians at Ndouendi would be delighted in the Italian edition of Pour la Révolution Africaine. Since then, the publication of Fanon's work would appear more casual, more random, and less systematically engaged, and therefore less ideological committed. He also, Fanon's entire and it has a weird EURVRE, of which he had compiled a comprehensive inventory. He continued to make mention of it in this letter. In March 1966, the Italian translation of Pour la Révolution Africaine had not yet come out, although it had been commissioned nearly 2 years earlier. The Pirelli archives contained an unpublished preface to this translation dated 1966 by Boliam Menkoff, an FLM militant who is worth citing for his evaluation of Fanon's contribution to revolutionary socialism in the developing world. Contrary to the intelligentsia's comfortably settled in speculative realms, Fanon gave himself entirely to the War of Independence. Menkoff noted in particular that Fanon helped that bit more to cut the umbilical cord, tying the third worldist avant-garde to the European left. To sum up, Pirelli had managed to dissuade Ndouendi from publishing the post-humanist collection of Fanon in order to make room for his own project of an anthology of his writings, which he never completely abandoned, despite his, I don't know this word, denial. Where's my phone? Here it is. First word.
Acerbic.
Acerbic, sharp, sarcastic, or sour in tone, speech, or taste.
Acerbic.
Acerbic denial. The Ndouendi archives also contained a small biography of Fanon, written by Pirelli, which comprises three typed pages. written in French, and probably dates from 1966. This text was sent to Josie Fanon for verification in June 1966, and it would wish to include it in second edition of a word I can't say, a couple words I can't say because they're probably in French or Italian. This biography represents one of the first attempts at the general account and interpretation of Fanon's life and work. Pirelli, in commenting on Fanon's work in the Blenda Clinic during the Algerian War, noted that, quote, he is elaborating an absolutely original model of analysis of colonialist alienation, viewed through the mental diseases of the colonized people and in relation with the ethnic cultural traditions of the Arabic world. He states that when Fanon was forced to leave Algeria for Tunis, he defined himself as a citizen of the Algerian Revolution. At this period, he claims, Fanon could be read as trying to insert the Algerian experience into the perspective of African unity and of revolutionary initiative, broadened to the whole developing world. Pirelli correspondence revealed the several years he spent trying to find the last unpublished text of Fanon's dispersed overture. He asked Jacquin Charby to seek out a first psychiatric text at the, oh my gosh, another French word it looks like. It's probably a place in France in particular, a task that yields some success. His attempt to find the lectures on socio-psychology given in Tunis was not successful. His correspondence with Josie Fanon in 1967 and in 1968 also shows that he tried to obtain the recordings of lectures that Fanon gave to the cadres of the National Liberation Army in the summer of 1961. Josie had a copy of them, but she fussed to pass them on to him, despite his insistence, writing that, quote, these lectures belong to those for whom they were made. That is to say, don't let this rub you the wrong way. The political commissars of the frontier, Bodemias and the others, they have the right to do with them whatever they please, and I am the first to recognize their right. Pirelli believed that the tapes were part of the legacy of revolutionary socialism that should be shared with the world. But of course, there was nothing he could do. Eventually, Pirelli, after many heated arguments with various editors at Ndouin about the format the Fanon anthology should take, was able to publish a 2-volume edition of Fanon's selected works titled Something in a Different Language in 1971. The exchange of letters held in the Ndouin archives around the production of this anthology reveals discussions around the matter of the preface, while one editor suggests Federico Stammi, a Marxist critic, Pirelli had begun to favor Giovanna Jarvis, a psychiatrist who psychiatry movement in Italy, on whom Fanon had had a significant influence. Jarvis was a member of the editorial team at Ndouin. The Pirelli archives also contained an unpublished preface to Fanon's selected works written by the famous Italian sinologist Edoardo Massia, a scholar of Mao and the Chinese Revolution. But Jarvis' preface was eventually published in the volume. Jarvis' excellent essay focused on the contribution by Fanon to the field of psychiatry through his political writings. Jarvis had originally wanted to produce a collection of his psychiatric writings, but then decided not to, because he found his technical articles less groundbreaking than the ones emerging out of his political works. Jarvis found Fanon's insight also relevant to the analysis of the psychopathology of the European working classes, since their conditions of capitalist oppression was analogous to that of colonial oppression. As Jarvis says, Fanon insists especially on the relationship between political and psychological oppression and suffering, and on the subjective aspect, namely those related to consciousness. of the personal liberation process in revolutionary struggle. For Jarvis, Fanon's work represented a important step ahead of the delineation of a Marxist-inspired psychiatry that took account of the specific culture and psychological conditions of the subterranean. No. Let me look at that word. Cool, I don't have a little thing. Yeah. Thank you. No.
Subaltern.
I was right, subaltern. A person or a social group in a lower or subordinate position lacking political, economic, and social power, whether European or colonized. This story about publishing Fanon's work in Italy reveals two things. First, the point to which Fanon was considered in Italy, perhaps more so than elsewhere in Europe, as an engaged author whose work would have a new and profound renaissance among the 1968 generation, a generation that was nourished on anti-fascist ideals, but that also desire to renovate the European left, taking movements outside of Europe as inspiration. The opera, I can't say the word, came out in 1971, a part of the Serene Politica, in which they mingled with books by Malcolm X, works on the international student movement, on the war in Vietnam, and as well as a book of photos and essays on psychiatric hospitals in Italy by Franca Oreggio, I can't say the word, and Franco Bascalelli, whose pioneering psychiatry was strongly influenced by Fanon. But this phrase up here, what's up, Carrot, which became a classic that is beyond the relative contingencies of the developing third worldist movement, found its place in, I can't say this word, the university, a series with an expansive and beautiful binding alongside other authors such as Walter Benjamin, Antonio Gramsci, and many other world intellectuals. The second outstanding feature of this history is that Fanon's work was to be read and understood beyond the established trajectory of his best-known books. It is important to reconstruct and carefully gather his scattered writings, an analysis, another appeal, the material conditions surrounding their publication, since he himself perceived his writing as the moments of a work in progress, corresponding between Frantz Fanon, Francois Mesereau, Giovanni Pirelli, and Galileo, and I can't say his name, 1961, Giovanni, oh great, we're going to do letters now, oh great, Giovanni Pirelli and Frantz Fanon, versus 15th May 1961. Dear Dr. Fanon, Mesereau has given the option for the Italian edition to the Enduin publishers in Turin. Conrad Raniero Panzeria and myself are taking care of this for Enduin. We will try to do it quickly and well. This depends very much upon the replies that you give to the question I ask here. Do you want to add one or more than one new chapter? In this case, is the material already written? And by when could you get it to me? 2. In case we were thinking of adding your talk at the Rome Congress. Okay. 3. We African Action, I think it was, and recall your articles on the occasion of Labumba's assassination. B. The Moroccan newspaper, the Union paper, Ben Bakara. Talk to me about this. I am unfamiliar with them. Oh, great, I get it. I'm not approved. If you agree in principle, we would need you to send us all your articles, or those that you consider to be the most valid for the duration as soon as possible. It is evident that in this case, the book would comprise 2 parts, one of essays, one of news articles. 4. Mesereau told me 2 things: that you envision writing a preface for a foreign edition of, I can't say that name. If you haven't changed your mind about this, we would be very glad. You will have time to write it calmly while we ready the book's translation, and that of what you will send us. That you envision sending him an essay on the situation and general prospects in Africa. We very much hope that this comes to fruition. Here, we could turn it into a separate book in a collection that is perfectly suited to an essay of this sort, or else include the essay in a book itself. Our preference is for the first solution. Needless to say that if we are asking a lot of you, it is because we want to make a serious book, one that might represent the qualitative leap compared to the endless cashiers and grievances of liberal protest. If I was able to make myself somewhat understood in our meetings in Tunis last February, I dare to hope that you realize that our envisaging this publishing enterprise is not simply for the purpose of doing another book on Algeria. Lastly, if you deem it necessary for useful, I will try after you have examined the problem we have poised you after you have gathered the material to come to Tunis for a few days to organize the book in its totality in the first 10 days of June, for example. I thank you also in the name of my colleagues and the publishers of Enduin. I ask you to pardon me for my abominable French. I salute you with great friendship, Genevieve Pirelli, Franz Fanon, Genevieve Pirelli. Hold on a second. I don't want to do these letters. Okay. 1963. In September 1963, Mesereau began work on the plan for the edition of Fanon's complete works. To this end, he wrote the Radi Malek, the former editor-in-chief of El Mujadi, then the Algerian ambassador of Belgrade, where he had published a collected edition of the newspaper in three. What? I have no idea what you're talking about. Sorry. Hold on. In Belgrade, where he published a collected edition of his newspaper in 3 volumes, as well as to Josie Fanon, in order to identify which El Mujahideen articles were written by Fanon. In the present volume, see the introduction to the political writings above, page. Okay. Also, with this project in mind, he wrote to Genevieve Pirelli, where he presents Mesereau's key letter, as well as Pirelli's reply. Pirelli then attempted to locate all the missed text. Mr. G. Pirelli, via Montello, 23, Versi, Italy, Paris, 6 September. Okay, there's some more notes. I don't want to read these things. All right, looks like we're moving to another thing. Part 5, Frantz Fanon's Library and Life. Frantz Fanon's Library. List published, presents, and commented by Jean Khalifa. Presentation. This list of some 400 works was drawn up on the basis of the catalog made by F. Bullock Corone, I can't say the name, and S. I can't say these guys' name, I'm so sorry everybody, of the library that Olivier Fanon gave to the Centre National. And there's more French. I'm sorry everybody, it's more French of Algiers. This family library also contains Josie Fanon's book, as well as several books published after Fanon's death in December 1961. In the following list, only those titles published in his lifetime are given. A certain number of works that were manifestly not his were left out, but others that likely belonged to Josie were kept insofar as they had perhaps elicited their shared interests. It is well known that Fanon read a lot of poetry and theater. During his period in France, books and journals were not yet all trimmed. In several cases, only some of the pages were cut, and I have indicated which ones. Each volume has been verified. Many of them contain marks in the margins or under certain words or phrases, when they appear to be significant, in particular in relations to the rest of the overture, or when they are accompanied by annotation. I indicate them. While it is quite possible that some of these remarks are inscriptions were made by other readers, in most of the cases, Fanon's interest, style, and writing are discernible. This library also contains a certain number of propaganda brochures or classic editions of Marx's work. It is highly likely that Fanon, as a journalist, and Josie, who was herself a journalist in Algiers, automatically received a large number of them, as was the case for a good portion of the intelligentsia in Europe and in Africa up until 1970s. Most of them do not seem to have been read. I have presented a separate list of them in the interest of clarity. But from that list, Fanon has carefully read various works by Marx, Lenin, Engels, Lenin, and Plekhanov. Lastly, he read and contributed to several important journals of the period in particular. These journals, they're in different language, all which marked his generation, as well as the major Francophone journals on psychiatry and neurology. I have drawn up a separate list of these journals, which are often abundantly annotated, and, moreover, allowed us to date his preoccupation at precise moments. The testimonies occur. Fanon read insistently and very widely. Many books were probably lost during Fanon's various moves, but this library gave us an idea of the range of his interests. But no means are these works to be taken as sources, in a sense in which the overture might be reduced to them, but instead as encountered as shocks, or else as toolboxes that enable the work which unhesitantly appropriates them to deepen its founding question and institutions. In what follows, the reader will find a group proportion of the books to which Fanon published works. In particular, I cannot say this word because it's also in French, refer. Naturally, we find among them a large medical and psychiatric literature, as well as classic and existentialist philosophy, including Jaspers, Kierkegaard, Marleau, Ponty, and Sartre. However, one also notes Fanon's considerable interest in other thinkers, Nietzsche, of course, but also Blanchard Covey for his reading of Hegel, Jean Walla, Emmanuel Levinas, Simon Weil, Nicholas Callas, and Michael, I can't say these people's names, sorry. In literature, theater, and poetry dominated. Readers of Fanon's play will not be surprised to find Achilles, Corneille, Racine, Claudel, alongside Saint John Percy and Caesar. In the text sent to Rene, I can't say his name, who kindly passed it on to us, Raymond Pagis, a great bookseller in Lyon, described Fanon's relations to books in the following terms. Hey, Jordan. I can still see that man who for some time came more and more regularly to the bookstore. That was in 1948. I was a young bookseller and paid close attention to clients, to the readers who came back to the store regularly. He was one of them. I can see him entering again and smiling on his lips as he slipped between the display stands with the elegance and suppleness that only he had. He was rather young. I think we were close in age, rather tall and thin, with a lively and penetrating gaze. he was immediately rather likable to me in any case. He returned increasingly often, sometimes making only a whirlwind stop, at other times lingering more tranquilly, and then he would talk more readily. He didn't open up much, and we spoke above all about literature. He was curious about everything, most especially about the human sciences and poetry, which was one of our favorite subjects. I don't have an accurate memory of the poem that I might have introduced him to, but what I do recall is that he allowed me truly to appreciate Aimé Césaire, about whom he spoke with intelligence and sensitivity. We were very quickly on friendly terms with one another, and he started speaking to me of himself. His name was Frantz Fanon. He was from Martinique, and he had completed his studies in medicine, specialized in psychiatry. He talked about his country and his professions with the passion that was so characteristic of his personality, a passion that you felt as was beneath a calm and likable exterior, wholly ready to ignite, to explode. Our conversations became longer, more personal, and one day I proposed to him that we continue them in a more comfortable setting at my place. He accepted enthusiastically. On the agreed event, my wife, Marie Amin, and Fanon got to know each other and spontaneously sympathized with each other. It was a long and cordial evening, and on that day, a friendship emerged between the three of us to last for as long as he was alive. He returned often. I think that he liked being in a friendly, almost familial atmosphere with us, which he had probably been missing. And little by little, he began to talk about himself in a more intimate way, and more precisely about his suffering as an excluded man, as a man rejected owing to the color of his skin. He told us about the rebuffs, the affronts that he had endured. He mentioned a woman who had advertised a room to rent, and who, when he showed up, retorted, "I asked for a student, not a N-word." And also a man in the train who oh my gosh. Big word. Hold on a second. No, I am number one? What? What's going on?
We're hitting like and trying to be number one on the thing.
Oh, okay. Interpolated. To be formally questioned about official actions or philosophy, the literary theory, to be held or assigned to social identity by an ideology. Interpolated him. Hey, N-word. Put my suitcase in the rack. And I don't know, I'm gonna say imbecile, racism that came through at any given opportunity in the most Odine acts of everyday life. We were sickened, cut to the quick. That must have been the time when he began to write Pierre Noir Masquis Blancs. He spoke with me about it sometimes in the course of our conversation. However, if this topic returned frequently to our conversation, it was nonetheless not an essential point. Poetry, for example, always had pride of place. We always took the greatest pleasure in chatting about Césaire and Char, and as well as Aragon, Breton, and Eldoror, and Damas, and Senghor. One evening he took us to a poetry reading of Aimé Césaire, organized by his friend Achilles. He had chosen to recite Bonatuquet, a poem that he liked and that he read with a remarkable accuracy of tone. Frantz was curious about all things, and he could be extremely eloquent. He was a born storyteller. Okay. Whoa. Is this the end? This can't be the end. Oh my god.
Did we finish it?
Maybe. Yeah. Hold on. Still looking. Might have finished it. We might have finished it. I didn't realize the abrupt finishing. It's kind of abrupt finish. I was expecting more. If we finish this, that means we can move on to the next book, which I'll go get right now and show everybody. These are just notes. Well, Fanon, Marx's political brochure, yeah. Well, Fanon, what a very, very good man. Very good person. Well, according to what we know. What people are saying is what they're saying about him, so I'm just going off what people say and who have been in relationship with him. He died too quick. He had lots to give to the situations of analyzation with comparing the economic status and psychological status of things and grounding it in the materialist analysis. So Fanon did add, and that's why I'm a Fanonist, because Fanon added to the dialectics, to Marx's dialectics, in my personal opinion. Yeah, this is it. Fanon's Keats dates. Yeah, we're done. The book is over with. Let me go get the other book and show what the other book we're going to read. Let me go get it real quick, though.
That's good.
It's underneath anti-capitalism. Just want to let everybody know. No, go away. I need to go to anti-capitalism. Here it goes, anti-capitalist book. I'm just download it on here, then I'll go get the picture. There you go. We're doing Capitalism and Slavery by Eric Williams. I'm gonna... Yeah, do it. You want me to do a tag? Hold on, let me get this. Because I got to get the picture on my phone. Oh my god. Oh, it's not that bad.
Weren't we supposed to invite somebody for capitalism and slavery? I don't remember who wanted to be.
Jasmine Sherman said they want, or someone from your group said that when we start reading Kwame Ture, because I was thinking of reading Kwame Ture, but during when he was Stokely Carmichael, all the way up, maybe a couple of his works. You don't want to do capitalism and slavery? Why not? Why not? It's a Caribbean perspective. Why not get a black perspective? I think even as Marxists, we should look at the black radical tradition. You know, we should observe that and have inquiries about it and make observations and things. Because as Marxists, you know, there might be we're not dogmatists. You know, we're not dogmatists. Our science is ever evolving, moving, and going. Oh, were you just kidding though? I don't know if you were kidding. All right, hold up. Let me go do something real quick. Am I still here? Good, I'm still here.
Okay, so Rocket Surgeon said it was just a joke.
Oh, okay. I was like, I take things literally, so my fault. I take things literally. There you go. that's what we're reading. That's the book. I tagged everybody. So, Lind, if you can, I tagged everybody there. But that's what we're reading right there. And it's only 200 pages long, so it's a pretty short book. But I've been looking at that one for a while, and I thought maybe I'd give it a read. And then we'll go on to Stokely Carmichael and Kwame Ture. Yeah. So that's what we're reading. I think he's from Trinidad. I think it's Eric Williams from Trinidad. I think he's doing observation there. So I'm gonna read it. No, tomorrow. I'm glad we actually ended in an hour because it makes sense because my voice, it's still a little rough. So no, I'm starting it tomorrow. We'll start it tomorrow. I'll go over let's look at, you know what, we can do this together. Let's check out some of the inquiries. Let's look at the table of contents. Sometimes the table of contents can give you a little bit of insight. So I like looking at the table of contents. So, introduction. The origins of black slavery, the development of black slave trade, British commerce, and the triangular trade, the West, they said West Indies, but the Caribbean interest, British industry and the triangular trade, the American Revolution, the development of British capitalism, the new industrial order, British capitalism and the West Indies, which is, we're going to say, Caribbean, the commercial part of the nation of slavery, the saints of slavery, the slaves of slavery. Conclusion. Seems pretty good. I'm actually interested. What does everybody else think?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't read this one yet, so it sounds interesting.
Yeah, I haven't read this one either, so it is very interesting. So it sounds interesting. The preface. Okay. I don't know if we'll read the foreword. We'll probably read the preface and introduction, maybe. Because people say to read that. So, yeah, so we'll read that tomorrow. We'll start it tomorrow. See how it goes. Hopefully it goes good. What did you think about the book that we just finished, though?
I really enjoyed it. I always love learning more about Fanon.
Mm-hmm.
It was interesting, and I liked learning more about the way he did psychology too. Like, I don't agree with everything he did, but in the time that it was the best. And then I do agree with the outpatient psych units and the fact that he was able to bring that to the masses. And so I thoroughly enjoyed it.
I like how he applied dialectics to like his psychiatric endeavors and everything, and applied it to the colonial situation and stuff like that. So I like that. So all right, everybody, well, I'll go ahead and close it out. I appreciate everybody. I hope everybody has a good evening.